Hello and welcome to the next section of your Psychology Summer Independent Learning work. This section is going to be looking at a key study in psychology by a psychologist called Loftus, which explores the area of reconstructive memory and eyewitness testimony. So before we start, we're going to have a little bit of a task. I'm going to show you 12 words and they will be quickly removed from the screen. Your task is to try and remember them. So don't write anything down just yet. Okay, here we go. Okay, so what I would like you to jot down now is how many words you think came before the word sleep. So have a little think about that for me now and jot your answer down. Okay, if we look back at the list, what you've probably noticed there is that there wasn't actually the word sleep. Now, when this has been conducted on participants in an experiment situation, many people think that they did recall the word sleep and have a little bit of a guess as to how many words they think come before that word. So if you did do that, you're not alone. That's probably what I would be expecting you to do. What I'd like you to think about is why though? Why do quite a lot of people think that they have remembered the word sleep? Now, in psychology, part of the explanation could be that memory, because it is what we call reconstructive, makes you remember things and details that actually weren't there. And because memory is reconstructive, it also makes you forget things as well. So we do know from psychology research that memories are not very accurate. It's not like a video recording where you can just play it back and recall details. Memories are prone to being altered and changed, hence the name reconstructive. And we tend to change our memories, not because we're purposely lying, but because we use our previous knowledge, expectations, experiences to help us fill in the gaps in our memories. And that acts as a mental template known as a schema. A schema contains our previous beliefs and experiences, which we then use to guide our future behaviour and to help us create memories. So you probably recalled the word sleep because you would be expecting it to be associated with things like bed, pillow, dream from what you know in the past, and therefore you have a schema of what sleep is, and it encompasses all those different words. Okay, so that's what we mean by reconstructive memory, which has been investigated by psychologists extensively. Okay, so what I'm going to show you now is I'm going to show you a clip which explores the idea of reconstructive memory in more detail. So for this task, you do need to grab a pen and paper, and I would like you to write this question down. You are going to write a paragraph explaining what the misinformation effect is, and I'd like you to give examples of that when you are watching this video clip. So if you just pause the video now to write that question down. Okay, and we're going to watch this 5 minutes clips while you jot down your answers to that question.
We're on location of a movie set in the 1950s, complete with cameras, bossy director, and on-set police for security. We've also invited a group of spectators to watch the filming. Pay attention along with them as the crew gets the final shot of the movie. Try to remember what you see.
There we go. Final shot, everyone. Action.
watching. Everything you see is fair game.
Watch out for the car! Cut!
Okay, that wasn't part of the movie. Did you catch what just happened? I know, it was a lot to take in. But we're going to let you in on a little secret. The actors, director, crew, and police are all in on it. Everyone, in fact, except our spectators. And former Las Vegas Police Sergeant Chris Curtis is here to test your memory. He's going to ask you and our other witnesses 3 questions about what you just saw. Ready?
What color was the car that got hit?
Think back and try to be accurate. Got your answer?
Did you say blue? Good, that's correct. Next question. How fast do you think the car was going when it bumped into the other car?
What do you think? Was the red car going 10, 15, 20, 30, or 40 miles an hour? Got your answer? Did you guess around 20 miles an hour? If so, you agree with 80% of people we showed this video to. Before we reveal if you're correct or not, let's see what our spectators have to say.
How fast would you say the car was going when it smashed into the other car?
I'd say 40.
Between 40 and 50.
It was going about 30 miles an hour.
Definitely 50 miles an hour.
These people think the speed was really high. Is that what you thought? Or did you think it was much lower? It turns out the actual speed was 20 miles an hour. Is that what you guessed? So why were our eyewitnesses so much higher? The thing is, only some of our witnesses guessed high. Others were much closer to the real speed.
How fast do you think the car was going when it bumped into the other car?
Probably about 10, 15 miles per hour.
15 miles per hour.
50 miles an hour?
Yeah.
Okay, how can this guy think it's 50
Between 40 and 50.
and this guy think it's 15?
15 miles per hour.
After all, they both saw the same crash. But if you've been paying attention, you'd know it's not the crash that matters, it's the question. Listen carefully to Sergeant Curtis.
How fast would you say the car was going when it smashed into the other car? How fast do you think the car was going when it bumped the other car?
Did you catch it? He said smashed to some witnesses.
Smashed into the other car. Smashed into the other car. Smashed into the other car.
And bumped to others, including you.
When it bumped the other car.
The word smashed actually increased the speed of the red car in our spectators' memory.
So I want to tell you, the actual speed of the accident was 20 miles an hour.
I don't believe that. That's crazy.
Yeah, that would surprise me. It seemed like it was 30 miles an hour.
You're kidding, right?
That's a big difference.
It's incredible if you think about it. One word has the power to totally rewrite a memory. Don't feel bad if you got the speed of the car wrong. We're going to give you another chance to test your memory.
Final question. You saw the driver blow through a stop sign right after the accident. Yes or no?
Before we reveal the answer, let's see what our spectators have to say.
Did you see the car run through the stop sign after the accident?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I saw him go through the stop sign.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Watch the replay. Do you agree the driver ran through a stop sign? Look closely, and you can see it's actually a yield sign. Did Sergeant Curtis mess with your memory again? If so, you're not alone.
Would it surprise you to know that it was not a stop sign, but it was a yield sign?
Let's go back and check it out. I think it was a stop sign.
So what was going on in your brain when Sergeant Curtis manipulated your memory along with our participants? Experts call it the misinformation effect, and it reveals memories are never a perfect recall of an event.
Every time you receive new information from a trustworthy source, your brain reshapes your memory based on those details.
And memories formed under stress, like a car accident, are especially vulnerable to change.
Okay, so you should have written down a paragraph explaining what you think the misinformation effect is with the examples from the video clip there. Okay, secondly, What I'm also going to show you is another clip, but this time it's from what we call a TED talk by the psychologist who has investigated reconstructive memory and eyewitness testimony extensively. So the last clip mentioned that the misinformation effect is more prominent when you are under a stressful situation, and that could be when you are witnessing the events of an accident or a crime. So Elizabeth Loftus has done a lot of research into this. So again, I'd like you to answer the following questions. If you just want to pause the video now and just jot down those 3 questions for me. Okay, we're just going to watch the first 8 minutes of this clip.
I'd like to tell you about a legal case that I worked on involving a man named Steve Titus. Titus was a restaurant manager. He was 31 years old. He lived in Seattle, Washington. He was engaged to Gretchen, about to be married. She was the love of his life. And one night, the couple went out for a romantic restaurant meal. They were on their way home, and they were pulled over by a police officer. You see, Titus's car sort of resembled a car that was driven earlier in the evening by a man who raped a female hitchhiker. And Titus kind of resembled that rapist. So the police took a picture of Titus. They put it in a photo lineup. They later showed it to the victim, and she pointed to Titus's photo. She said, "That one's the closest." The police and the prosecution proceeded with a trial, and when Steve Titus was put on trial for rape, the rape victim got on the stand and said, "I'm absolutely positive that's the man." And Titus was convicted. He proclaimed his innocence. His family screamed at the jury. His fiancée collapsed on the floor sobbing, and Titus is taken away to jail. So what would you do at this point? What would you do? Well, Titus lost complete faith in the legal system, and yet he got an idea. He called up the local newspaper. He got the interest of an investigative journalist, and that journalist actually found the real rapist, a man who ultimately confessed to this rape, a man who was thought to have committed 50 rapes in that area. And when this information was given to the judge set Titus free. And really, that's where this case should have ended. It should have been over. Titus should have thought of this as a horrible year, a year of accusation and trial, but over. It didn't end that way. Titus was so bitter. He'd lost his job. He couldn't get it back. He lost his fiancée. She couldn't put up with his persistent anger. He lost his entire savings, and so he decided to file a lawsuit against the police and others whom he felt were responsible for his suffering. And that's when I really started working on this case, trying to figure out, how did that victim go from "that one's the closest" to "I'm absolutely positive that's the guy"? Well, Titus was consumed with his civil case as he spent every waking moment thinking about it. And just days before he was to have his day in court, he woke up in the morning, doubled over in pain, and died of a stress-related heart attack. He was 35 years old. So I was asked to work on Titus's case because I'm a psychological scientist. I study memory. I've studied memory for decades. And if I meet somebody on an airplane, this happened on the way over to Scotland, if I meet somebody on an airplane and we ask each other, "What do you do? What do you do?" and I say, "I study memory," they usually want to tell me how they have trouble remembering names, or they've got a relative who's got Alzheimer's or some kind of memory problem. But I have to tell them, I don't study when people forget. I study the opposite, when they remember. When they remember things that didn't happen or remember things that were different from the way they really were. I study false memories. Unhappily, Steve Titus is not the only person to be convicted based on somebody's false memory. In one project in the United States, information has been gathered on 300 innocent people, 300 defendants who were convicted of crimes they didn't do. They spent 10, 20, 30 years in prison for these crimes, and now DNA testing has proven that they're actually innocent. And when those cases have been analyzed, 3/4 of them are due to faulty memory, faulty eyewitness memory. Well, why? Like the jurors who convicted those innocent people and the jurors who convicted Titus, many people believe that memory works like a recording device. You just record the information, then you call it up and play it back when you want to answer questions or identify images. But decades of work in psychology has shown that this just isn't true. Our memories are constructive. They're reconstructive. Memory works a little bit more like a Wikipedia page. You can go in there and change it, but so can other people. I first started studying this constructive memory process in the 1970s. I did my experiments that involved showing people simulated crimes and accidents and asking them questions about what they remember. In one study, we showed people a simulated accident, and we asked people how fast were the cars going when they hit each other. And we asked other people how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other. And if we asked the leading smash question, the witnesses told us the cars were going faster. And moreover, that leading smash question caused people to be more likely to tell us that they saw broken glass in the accident scene when there wasn't any broken glass at all. In another study, we showed a simulated accident where a car went through an intersection with a stop sign, and if we asked a question that insinuated it was a yield sign, many witnesses told us they remember seeing a yield sign at the intersection, not a stop sign. And you might be thinking, well, these are filmed events, they're not particularly stressful. Would the same kind of mistakes be made with a really stressful event? In a study we published just a few months ago, we have an answer to this question. Because what was unusual about this study is we arranged for people to have a very stressful experience. The subjects in this study were members of the U.S. military who were undergoing a harrowing training exercise to teach them what it's going to be like for them if they are ever captured as prisoners of war. And as part of this training exercise, these soldiers are interrogated in an aggressive, hostile, physically abusive fashion for 30 minutes. And later on, they have to try to identify the person who conducted that interrogation. And when we feed them suggestive information that insinuates it's a different person, many of them misidentify their interrogator, often identifying someone who doesn't even remotely resemble the real interrogator. And so what these studies are showing is that when you feed people misinformation about some experience that they may have had, you can distort or contaminate or change their memory. Well, out there in the real world, misinformation is everywhere. We get misinformation not only if we're questioned in a leading way, but if we talk to other witnesses who might consciously or inadvertently feed us some erroneous information, or if we see media coverage about some event we might have experienced. All of these provide the opportunity for this kind of contamination of our memory.
Okay, so I'm going to pause that video there. Hopefully that has given you enough information to be able to answer those 3 questions. Okay, so the last thing that we're going to look at is the psychologist that you've just seen on the video clip, her famous study in the 1970s, which she did refer to throughout that clip. So there are details on the screen now of that study, and it's to do with reconstructive memory as an eyewitness. And you need to read through those details of that study. And when you have done that, you can pause the video in just a moment. You are going to be asked some questions. So just have a read through the details of that study now and pause the video. Okay, there are 4 questions that I would like you to now answer based on the details that you have just read on that study. So you might need to pause this and go back to details of that study, but you need to write these questions down for me now. You're going to be asked to draw a bar chart. So think back to what that would actually mean. What kind of information would you be presenting on that bar chart? And it's likely to be to do with those results. You're going to think about what conclusions you can make from the experiment. What does it tell us about the reliability of eyewitnesses when they are giving their testimony? Do you think the experiment, the task Loftus used, would be a good example of how people would be witnesses in real life? In psychology, we call that ecological validity. And then the last question, how do you think the results could be used in real life to help the police and the courts when they are dealing with eyewitnesses? And in psychology, we always consider, when we do research, what is the real life practical application? So write those questions down for me now and have a go at answering them. That concludes the section on reconstructive memory and eyewitness testimony. So thank you very much for listening.